You're not the client. I'm the one paying your retainer. I didn't understand how a sentence that petty could end a career I'd spent my entire adult life building. But that's where this started, in a glass-walled conference room that smelled like lemon polish and stale arrogance, with a senior partner leaning back like a king and me sitting forward like a man begging for air. Legally, I'm Alexander M. Hale, but everyone calls me Alex. And I got publicly scapegoated in front of the entire firm for stealing money I never touched after I helped win a settlement that would have changed a disabled client's life. So, am I the asshole for what I did next? I'm a paralegal, not the type who kind of fell into law. I chose it. I'm the guy who triple checks exhibit lists, catches the missing signature page, highlights the one line in the deposition transcript that destroys the defense's story. I don't cut corners. I don't play games with the truth. I don't do creative billing. If something feels off, I document it and I follow procedure. I learned that discipline the hard way. Growing up, I watched the consequences of people who didn't. My mother had 2 jobs and 1 rule. If you can't sleep with it, don't do it. It wasn't poetic. It was survival. It meant, don't take what isn't yours, don't lie to cover your mistakes, and don't become the kind of person who needs a story to justify their choices. I took that rule into law, which is how I ended up at Caldwell and Rusk, a mid-sized firm with big firm swagger. We had sleek branding, polished hallways, and a lobby that looked like a luxury hotel. The public saw advocates. The staff saw the real ecosystem. Associates burning out, paralegals holding the whole machine together, and one senior partner who treated everyone like a tool with an expiration date. His name was Grant Rusk. Grant was charming in the way a blade is shiny. He smiled like he liked you, spoke like he respected you, and watched like he was calculating what you could be made to do. He'd say things like, "Alex, you're the backbone of this place," and I'd feel proud for about half a second until the next sentence. "So, I'm going to need you to stay late. Again, and don't put on the time sheet." He didn't say it like a request. He said it like physics. But the case that broke all this open wasn't about me. It was about a client named Marisol Vega. Marisol had been injured in a multi-vehicle collision caused by a trucking company that cut every safety corner it could. The impact crushed her lower spine. She lived with chronic pain that never fully stopped, even with medication. She used a chair some days, braces other days, and she had the kind of exhausted bravery you see in people who didn't choose their fight, but refused to lose it. Her husband had left within 6 months of the crash. Her employer restructured her position away. She was raising a teenage son who tried to be cheerful and failed because he was terrified. The trucking company's insurer did what they always do: deny, delay, dehumanize. They offered a settlement that wouldn't cover 3 years of her medical care, let alone a lifetime. We took it to litigation. Grant Rusk strutted around the office calling it my anchor case, like he personally took the crash for her. But he barely met with Marisol. He let me handle the day-to-day because, in his words, clients like her need consistency. What he meant was, I don't want to deal with her. Marisol and I built trust the slow way, through calls returned on time, documents explained in plain English, and me showing up at every mediation prep with an annotated binder and a plan. She'd ask, "Alex, are you sure you're not a lawyer?" And I'd laugh and say, "If I were, I'd charge you more and answer fewer emails." Her son, Diego, would sometimes sit in the background of Zoom calls, pretending not to listen. One day, I heard him say, barely audible, "Is that the guy who's helping Mom?" Marisol whispered, "Yes. Be nice." And Diego said, "Thank you." That thank you mattered more than any compliment from Grant ever did. We fought the case for nearly 2 years. We got trucking logs, maintenance records, dashcam footage they claimed didn't exist. We found the safety director's emails instructing drivers to make the numbers work and stop whining about rest breaks. We deposed a dispatcher who cracked under pressure and admitted they routinely altered schedules to hide violations. And I did what I always do. I documented everything. Every request, every response, every odd delay, every missing page, every accidental misfile. Because I could feel something else in the air around Grant. Something hungry. He was too interested in this one. Too hands-on at the last minute. Too eager to be the face of the victory. At trial, the defense tried to paint Marisol as non-compliant, exaggerating, motivated by money. Grant did his courtroom theater. But what won the day were the details, the timeline I built, the exhibit trail I made idiot-proof, the cross-reference chart that proved their logs were falsified. The jury came back with a verdict that made people stand up in the gallery. Then the trucking company's insurer asked to settle to avoid appeals. When the final number landed, it was life-changing. It wasn't just pay medical bills. It was afford a home adapted for her body. It was secure a college fund for Diego. It was get care without begging. When I told Marisol, she cried silently, like she didn't trust sound. I can breathe, she said. I can finally breathe. I should have been floating. Instead, I was nauseous, because the settlement funds didn't go to Marisol directly. They never do, not immediately. They go to the firm trust account, then disbursed per settlement statement. Liens, fees, net to client. Everything documented. Everything signed. And when that money hit, Grant Russ called me into his office like I was being summoned to a throne. He didn't even look up when I walked in. He was spinning a pen between his fingers, a little magician's wand. "Close the door," he said. I did. He smiled at the wall behind me, where my reflection hovered in the glass like a ghost. "Big day," he said. "Yes," I replied carefully. "The trust deposit should post by end of business." Grant nodded like he already knew. "I'm going to have you handle the transfer." I blinked. Handle the transfer? He finally looked at me, eyes bright with false warmth. "You're trustworthy, Alex. Everyone knows that." My stomach tightened. The trust account disbursements should go through accounting with dual authorization. That's policy. Grant waved a hand like policy was a fly. "Accounting is slow. We don't want Marisol waiting. She's suffered enough, right? That's why we do it correctly," I said. His smile thinned. "Do you want to tell the disabled single mother she has to wait because you're being, what's the word, precious?" I stared at him. "No, I want to follow the rules so no one can ever touch her money." Grant leaned forward. "Alex, I am the rule." There it was, not even disguised. He slid a folder toward me. Settlement statement. Disbursement forms. "You'll coordinate with the bank. I'll sign what needs signing." I didn't touch the folder. "Grant, I don't have signing authority." "You'll be fine," he said, voice syrupy. "We'll do it together." I still didn't move. "Can we have a lease from accounting present? Just so it's clean." The temperature in the room changed. Grant's eyes sharpened. "You don't trust me?" he asked softly. I forced my voice steady. "I trust procedure." He leaned back again, smile returning. "Procedure, right? You're adorable." He stood, came around the desk, and placed a hand on my shoulder, heavy, possessive. "Let's do this," he said. "For Marisol." The way he said her name made my skin crawl. That was the inciting betrayal. The moment the trap closed, even if I didn't hear it click yet, we walked down to accounting. Elise was there, and I felt a tiny surge of relief. Elise was competent and unflappable. She was the kind of person who could stare down a hurricane and ask it for documentation. Grant turned on his charm like a spotlight. "Elise," he said warmly, "we're getting Marisol's funds out today. I'd like Alex to coordinate because he's been a primary on-client contact." Elise frowned. "We still need 2 partners to sign disbursement authorizations, Grant." Grant nodded. "Of course. I'll sign. Caldwell will sign." Elise hesitated. "Caldwell is in court all day." Grant's smile didn't budge. "He'll sign electronically. Caldwell trusts me." Elise glanced at me, and I could see she didn't love this. But Grant was a senior partner. He was power with a tie. She said, "Okay, I'll draft the authorization." Grant clapped his hands once like a coach. "Great. Alex, coordinate with the bank once it's ready." I said, "Elise, please copy me on everything and put it in the client file." Elise nodded. "Always." Grant looked at me like I'd insulted his mother. The money posted at 2:17 p.m. At 2:23 p.m., Elise sent the draft settlement statement. Lien payoffs listed, firm fee calculated, net to client at the bottom. At 2:31 p.m., Grant emailed me, "Come to my office. Bring your laptop." At 2:35 p.m., I was sitting across from him again. He had his phone out. He was smiling at something like he'd already won. He said, "I have Caldwell's signature." I said, "Can I see the authorization email?" Grant's smile twitched. You want to see everything. I want to keep it clean, I repeated. He slid his phone across the desk. It was a forwarded email that appeared to be from Caldwell. Approved. Proceed. Gee. It looked real. It could have been real. But something in me whispered, too easy. Grant pulled the disbursement forms out of the folder. Sign here to acknowledge you coordinated. I'm not signing anything, I said. His eyes snapped to mine. What? I'm not authorized to sign disbursement documents, I said. I can coordinate communication, but I'm not signing acknowledgments on transfer forms. Grant leaned forward again, voice low. Alex, don't make this weird. I'm not making it weird, I said, heart thudding. I'm making it compliant. He stared at me for a long moment, then sat back and laughed, a short, humorless sound. Fine, he said. I'll handle the bank coordination myself. Go to your little checklists. I stood. I'll notify Marisol once the disbursement schedule is confirmed. Grant's smile returned, colder. Don't. I will. That should have been my warning flare. It was. I just didn't know how big the explosion would be. The next morning, I got an email from Elise that made my blood drain out of my face. Subject: urgent, trust, disbursement confirmation. It read, Alex, confirming per your authorization that the wire was executed yesterday. Attached are the sign forms. Attached were PDFs, with my signature on them. Not a scribble that looked vaguely like mine. Not something sloppy. It was my signature, replicated like a stamp, placed exactly where it would go if I'd signed. Under authorized by. I stared at it until my vision blurred. I immediately called Elise. She answered on the second ring. Hey, did you see? Elise, I cut in, voice shaking. I did not sign those. Silence. Then, slowly, what do you mean you didn't sign those? I mean that signature is forged, I said. I never authorized a wire. I never signed any disbursement form. Her voice dropped. Grant said you were handling it. I refused, I said. I told him I wouldn't sign anything. I could hear Elise breathing, sharp, like she was trying not to panic. The wire confirmation is from the bank portal. It went out. To where? I asked, and the question came out like a choke. Elise hesitated. To the payee listed on the authorization. Which is? I asked, already terrified. It's not Marisol's structured settlement administrator, Elise said, voice tight. It's an account labeled Vega Consulting Solutions, LLC. I felt like I'd been shoved off a building. That's not hers, I said. I know, Elise whispered. Marisol doesn't have an LLC. I stood up so fast my chair scraped. Elise, we need to stop everything. Freeze the trust account. Call the bank. Now. Alex, I can't just. Grant is. Grant is the one who forged my signature. I snapped, then immediately hated how harsh it sounded because Elise wasn't my enemy. Elise inhaled shakily. Okay. I'm calling the bank. I hung up and walked straight to Grant's office. His door was open. He was laughing with two associates, telling some story about a judge. I stepped into the doorway and said, Grant. He looked up, smile still on his face, and said, Alex. Perfect timing. I said, my signature was forged on a trust disbursement. The associates went silent. Grant blinked like I'd spoken a foreign language. What? Elise sent me the executed forms, I said. They have my signature. I didn't sign them. Grant's smile fell away, replaced by mild annoyance. Alex, don't do this in front of. Where is the money? I demanded. One associate's eyes widened. The other took a half step back, like the air turned toxic. Grant's expression shifted into something calculated. Alex, come inside. I didn't move. Where is Marisol's settlement money? Grant's tone sharpened. Inside. Now. I stepped in. The associates fled like they'd been released. Grant closed the door slowly, deliberately. Then he turned to me with a look of almost pity. Why are you doing this? He asked, as if I'd betrayed him. Why did you forge my signature? I shot back. Grant sighed. I didn't forge anything. You signed those. No, I said. I didn't. He walked to his desk, sat, and steepled his fingers. Alex, I have a meeting in 10 minutes. If you're overwhelmed, if you made a mistake, fine. We'll fix it. But you're not going to accuse me, of forgery. My hands are trembling. I clenched them to hide it. The money went to an LLC. That's not Marisol's. Grant smiled slightly. It is Marisol's. I stared. No, it's not. Grant leaned back. Marisol set up a consulting entity on my recommendation to protect her assets from creditors. That is not what we discussed with her, I said. Because you're not the attorney, he said, voice suddenly icy. You don't give legal advice. I didn't, I said, but she would have told me. I talk to her every week. Grant's eyes flicked, just for a second, like a lie adjusting itself. Not everything is your business, Alex. My heart slammed. Show me her written authorization. Grant's smile widened, and it was the smile of a man who already had the receipts ready. Gladly, he said, and opened his laptop. He turned the screen toward me. An email chain. It appeared to be between me and Marisol. It showed Marisol Vega writing. Alex, Grant says I need to use the LLC. Please proceed with the wire. Then me replying, understood. Please confirm routing details. Then Marisol, sending routing numbers. Then me saying, wire will be executed tomorrow. It was all there. A neat little lie wearing my name. I felt my skin go cold. That's not real, I whispered. Grant watched me like he was studying a bug. It came from your email. My email was not used, I said, voice rising. That's spoofed. Grant shrugged. Are you saying the IT department is lying? The timestamps? The server logs? My throat tightened. Grant, what are you doing? He leaned forward, voice soft. I'm protecting the firm. By stealing from a disabled woman? I hissed. By preventing an employee who's clearly cracking under pressure from destroying everything we've built, he said. I shook my head, dizzy. You're framing me. Grant didn't deny it. He smiled like he'd been waiting for me to say the words out loud. He said, Alex, you can either cooperate, or you can be the story. Then he slid a document across the desk. It was an internal audit notice, dated that morning, scheduled for that afternoon. My name listed as the primary point of contact for trust disbursement records. He staged an accidental audit. To point fingers. I stared at it, then at him. Grant said, go home. Take the day. You look pale. I whispered, you're going to ruin me. Grant's smile was thin. You're doing that yourself, Alex. You should have stayed in your lane. I walked out of his office on legs that didn't feel like mine. At 11:46 a.m., Elise texted me. Bank says the recall request failed. The funds already left the receiving bank. At 12:10 p.m., I got a call from Marisol. I answered, and her voice was tight with panic. Alex, Grant says there's a problem. My stomach dropped. What did he tell you? He said the money was sent, but it went to the wrong place, and they think you did it, she said, breathless. Alex, please tell me that's not true. I closed my eyes. Marisol, I didn't do it. I swear to you on everything I have. She started crying. Diego heard me on the phone. He's freaking out. Alex, I can't. This was. I know. I said, voice breaking. I know. Listen to me. Do not sign anything Grant sends you. Do not speak to anyone without me on the line. I'm going to get you help. Help, she choked. Grant said if I make noise, the settlement could be contested and I could lose it. He said I should cooperate. My vision tunneled. He threatened you. He didn't call it a threat, she whispered. He called it the reality of litigation. I gripped my phone, so heart hurt. Marisol, he is lying. You already won. The settlement is final. He's trying to scare you. She sniffed. Alex, I trust you. But he's a partner. He's powerful. I'm going to do this the right way, I said. I need you to trust me for a little longer. She whispered, okay. When I hung up, I stood in the hallway outside the file room and realized I was shaking like I had a fever. That afternoon, the audit happened. And guess who they accidentally focused on? Me. It wasn't a real audit. Not in the way people think. It was a performance. A scripted event with a conclusion pre-written. The managing partner, Caldwell, called me into a conference room with HR and the firm's outside compliance consultant, a man who introduced himself like he was apologizing for existing. Caldwell looked like he hadn't slept. He said, Alex, we have an issue. I sat down slowly. I know, HR woman. A substantial trust disbursement was executed using your authorization. Me, it was forged. Caldwell pinched the bridge of his nose. Grant says you handled it. Elise says the paperwork came from you. Me, Elise drafted it. Grant executed it. My signature is forged. Compliance consultant. Do you have evidence of forgery? Me. I have evidence I refuse to sign. I have emails requesting procedure. I have my calendar notes. Caldwell's eyes flicked. Grant also produced an email chain between you and the client directing the funds to the LLC. Me. That chain is manufactured. Spoofed addresses. Edited metadata. HR woman. Alex, are you saying Mr. Rusk is falsifying evidence? Me. Yes. Silence, thick and stunned. Caldwell exhaled slowly. That's a very serious accusation. Me. So is theft. So is forgery. So is stealing a disabled woman's settlement. Caldwell's jaw tightened. Grant says the client authorized an LLC. He says you coordinated directly. Me. Marisol did not authorize that. Grant is lying. Compliance consultant. What is your explanation for the wire? Me. Someone with access executed it. Caldwell. Alex, the trust account disbursement requires partner authorization and staff processing. Me, exactly. And that's when Caldwell's gaze dropped, just slightly, to the table. Like he knew, or like he didn't want to know. HR woman slid a paper toward me. We're terminating you effective immediately. You are to surrender your building access card and company laptop. My mouth went dry. You're suspending me based on forged documents. Caldwell's voice was strained. Alex, cooperate. If you didn't do it, it'll come out. I stared at him. Will it? He didn't answer. I stood, handed over my badge, and walked out. As I passed the bullpen, heads turned. Whispering rose like smoke. People who used to smile at me looked away. And that's when the flying monkeys started. If you've never experienced it, let me explain. When a powerful person decides you're the villain, they don't always dirty their own hands. They send people, not always knowingly. Sometimes they're true believers. Sometimes they're opportunists. Sometimes they're just scared and want to be on the safe side. By that evening, my phone was buzzing with messages I didn't recognize. Unknown number. You're a disgrace. Hope you go to jail. Unknown number. Give the money back, thief. A former coworker I barely knew. Did you seriously steal from a disabled woman? What is wrong with you? An associate I once helped at midnight. HR says not to contact you. But please tell me it isn't true. Then came social media messages, comments under old posts, strangers calling me scum. Someone had leaked just enough to paint a picture. Paralegal steals client settlement. No names, no details. But the story was designed to be irresistible. And the worst part? Some people wanted it to be true. Because if it was true, then the world stayed simple. Good firm, bad employee, problem solved. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch with my laptop, my personal one, pulling every email, every timestamp, every PDF version I'd ever saved in my own backups. I had a habit, born of anxiety and discipline. I saved copies of key documents to a secure personal archive whenever cases closed, stripped of privileged content when possible, mostly to protect against lost files. I never thought it would protect me against murder by paperwork. At 3:12 a.m., I found the first crack. The PDF of the disbursement authorization, supposedly signed by me, had metadata in its properties. I'm not a forensic expert, but I know enough to know PDFs remember things. Creation times, software versions, edit history sometimes. The PDF that I signed showed it was created on a machine labeled Grusk LT02. Grant's laptop. And the author field? Grant Rusk. I sat back, heart pounding. Then I found another crack, the spoofed email chain. The headers didn't match a normal internal email. The from address looked right, but the return path was wrong. Subtle, but there. It wasn't enough alone, but it was a rope. The next morning, I did what my mother's rule demanded. I followed procedure. I hired counsel. Not a buddy, not a casual consult, real representation. I called a legal ethics attorney named Dana Sue, whose office was the opposite of Caldwell and Russ Glitter. It smelled like coffee and old books. The receptionist looked like she'd seen every type of human panic and didn't judge any of it. Dana met me, listened, and didn't interrupt. When I finished, she said one sentence that made my knees go weak. You're being framed. Histoire de hair. She added, and not subtly. I swallowed. What do I do? Dana leaned forward. You do exactly what you already started doing. Preserve everything. Don't destroy evidence. Don't lash out. Don't contact the firm except through me. And we request a forensic review. I let out a breath that felt like I'd been holding it for days. They're going to report me. They already have, Dana said calmly. My stomach dropped. What? Dana slid her phone across the table. An email from the State Disciplinary Office's attorney grievance intake, or the attorney grievance intake at the State Disciplinary Office. A complaint had been filed alleging misappropriation of trust funds by Alexander M. Hale, that's my full name. I stared. I'm not even an attorney. Dana nodded. Paralegal ethics still matter. They can investigate if the complaint alleges misconduct in a legal setting. And if there's a suggestion you were acting outside your role, it gets uglier. Grant knows that. My hands clenched. He's trying to end me. Dana's gaze was steady. Then we make him regret it. That day, Dana sent a preservation letter to the firm. Do not delete emails. Do not alter files. Preserve server logs. Preserve bank portal access logs. She also sent a letter to the bank. Preserve wire records, IP logs, signatory authentication. Then she did something that surprised me. She requested discovery from the firm preemptively, like we were already in litigation. Because she said something I'll never forget. When someone frames you, Alex, they're not just trying to win. They're trying to bury you before you can stand up. I wanted to be angry. I was angry, but I was also terrified. Because there were moments, brief, shameful moments, when I heard the whispers in my head. What if they believe him? What if the paper wins? What if Grant is too powerful? And then there was Marisol. I called her that night. Dana advised me to keep contact minimal, but Marisol needed to know I wasn't abandoning her. She answered, voice exhausted. Alex. Marisol, I said softly. I hired a lawyer. We're going to trace the funds. She whispered. Grant called again. He said you're spiraling, and I should stop talking to you. My jaw clenched. That's manipulation. He wants to isolate you. She made a small sound like a laugh that died. He also said, if I cooperate, he might be able to advance me money from the firm while this gets sorted. My stomach turned. That's not generosity. That's hush money. I know, she whispered. But Diego keeps asking if we're going to lose the apartment. My throat tightened. You won't. I won't let that happen. There was a pause. Then she said, Alex, why are you doing this? You could walk away. They're blaming you. You could disappear. I thought of the former assistant Grant mentioned once in passing, a woman named Kira, who quit suddenly. I remembered how Elise had said her name like it hurt. I swallowed. Because it's the right thing. Marisol whispered, then I'm with you. And that gave me more strength than any legal strategy. For a week, everything got worse. Grant's flying monkeys multiplied. A former coworker named Todd, middle management, always desperate to be near power, started posting vague things online about thieves in trusted roles and people who pretend to be good. One of the associates, the one who used to call me for help, sent me a message that read, if you just confess, they might go easier. Please, think of Marisol. I stared at that message and realized something. They weren't just trying to ruin me. They were trying to make me confess to something I didn't do. Because if I confessed, Grant didn't need to prove anything. The story would close like a book. And then the pressure cooker turned into a furnace. I got served. Not by the bar, by the firm. Caldwell and Rusk filed a civil suit against me alleging fraud, misappropriation, and breach of fiduciary duty. I read the complaint on my couch and laughed once, a harsh sound that surprised me. Then I started shaking. Dana called me 30 minutes later. Alex, she said, and I could hear a smile in her voice, like she'd just been handed a gift. What? I asked, voice raw. My lawyer started laughing when he saw the lawsuit, she said. That's not me being flippant. That's strategy. Grant just made a mistake. I frowned. How is being sued a mistake? Dana's voice was almost cheerful. Because now we get discovery. Now we get subpoenas. Now he must answer questions under oath. He just dragged his lies into a room where lying has consequences. I swallowed. He's a lawyer. He'll wriggle. Not against forensic evidence. Not against bank logs. Not against IP records. Not against notary journals. Notary journals? I repeated, confused. You said the disbursement packet included a notarized client authorization page, right? Yes. I said slowly. It's in the PDF packet. A page with Marisol's signature notarized. Dana's voice dropped. Alex, did Marisol sign anything in front of notary? My blood turned to ice. No. Then someone committed notary fraud too. And notaries keep journals. I sat up, heart pounding. So we can find out exactly who showed up to that notary, Dana said. Or whether the notary is Grant's friend. Either way, it's a thread. That night, Marisol called me again. She sounded like she hadn't slept. Alex, she said, Grant sent me a letter. A settlement confirmation. He wants me to sign it. Do not. I said immediately. He says if I don't, the funds can't be reissued. That's a lie, I said. He's trying to create paper that looks like you approved the LLC after the fact. She whispered. He also said he's going to file something against me if I keep talking to you. He said I could be accused of collusion. My hands clenched. He is terrifying you because fear makes people compliant. Marisol started crying. I'm so tired, Alex. I swallowed hard. I know. I am sorta. But we're close to proof. How close? She whispered. I looked at the data Dana, and I had already compiled. The PDF metadata pointing to Grant's machine. The email header anomalies. The bank portal login timestamps. Close enough that he's panicking, I said. And that turned out to be true. 2 days later, Elise called me from a blocked number. Her voice was a whisper. Alex, I shouldn't be calling. Elise, I said, heart racing. Are you okay? I'm scared, she admitted. He's watching everything. IT pull my logs. HR asked who I spoke to. I lower my voice. Elise, you don't have to do anything that risks your job. Elise let out a shaky laugh. My job? Alex, he's going to burn me anyway. He's already saying I processed the wire without sufficient verification. My stomach turned. Of course he is. Elise swallowed audibly. Alex, I found something. My pulse spiked. What? I was reconciling trust account activity from last quarter, Elise whispered. Because I couldn't stop thinking about this. And there's another wire. Similar amount. Similar client LLC. Different case name. Different paralegal listed. My mouth went dry. Another one. Yes, Elise said, voice trembling. And the paralegal, she left. Kira. My skin prickled. Kira, the assistant who quit suddenly. Elise continued. HR told everyone she moved out of state. But, Alex, I found an NDA in her file. A severance agreement with a confidentiality clause. My throat tightened. Grant did this before. Elise whispered yes. I sat there in my apartment, staring at the wall like it might offer answers. Elise's voice shook. Alex, I don't think you're the first person he tried to bury. I whispered. Are you safe? Elise exhaled. I don't know, but I'm done being quiet. Dana moved fast. She subpoenaed the bank records for both wires. She subpoenaed the incorporation documents for Vega Consulting Solutions, LLC. She subpoenaed the notary's journal. And she requested the firm's IT logs through discovery. Who accessed what, when, from which IP. Grant responded through the firm's outside counsel like a man pretending he wasn't sweating. They tried to stonewall. They claimed privilege. They claimed undue burden. Dana didn't blink. She filed motions. She requested sanctions. She asked for court orders. And then, one afternoon, Dana called me and said, Alex, sit down. He said. Dana said, we have the trace. My heart hammered. What does it show? Dana's voice was crisp. The funds were routed from the trust account to Vega Consulting Solutions, LLC, which, surprise, is not owned by Marisol Vega. It's tied to a registered agent service used by dozens of shell companies. From there, it transferred to an account held by Rusk Strategic Consulting. I went still. Rusk as in Grant Rusk, Dana said. Same mailing address as his vacation condo. Same phone number as his private line. And the signatory on the account is, guess who? I swallowed. Grant. Dana said Grant. My vision blurred with sudden, dizzy relief. Can they deny it? I asked. They will try, Dana said. But it's not just the bank trace. The bank portal logs show the trust account wire was initiated from an IP address matching the firm's network, but not your workstation. It came from Grant's office terminal. My breath caught. He's done. Dana's tone was grim. Not yet. People like Grant don't go down without trying to set the building on fire. And she was right. Because the next day, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. It was Grant. His voice was calm, almost friendly. Alex, we need to talk. This is getting out of hand. Call me. I didn't. An hour later, he called again. This time, his voice was colder. Alex, you're making a mistake. You're not the client. You don't get to decide how this ends. I stared at my phone. Then a third call. You think your little lawyer is going to save you? Grant said, and now the friendliness was gone, replaced by something sharp. I can file bar complaints until you can't work in this town. I can make sure no firm touches you. You want to be a hero? Heroes debulk. Then he said the line that made my blood run cold. Marisol is fragile. People like her, they break. I'd hate for her to get stressed. I forwarded the voicemail to Dana. Dana replied, Good. That's intimidation. Save it. Then the flying monkeys intensified. Todd posted again. Funny how innocent people hire expensive lawyers. Someone from HR emailed me, illegally, through my personal contact, saying, You could have avoided all this if you just owned your mistake. An associate left a note on my apartment door. A note. It said, Confess, or you'll destroy Marisol. I stared at it for a long time, my hands shaking. For the first time, I felt truly bleak, not just scared, but hunted. I checked my locks twice, then 3 times. And in the dark at 2 a.m., I had a thought I hated. What if Grant is the kind of man who doesn't stop at paperwork? Dana insisted I report the intimidation. We did. The police took a report like it was a nuisance. The bar took a statement like it was a file. Everything moved slowly, except Grant. Grant moved fast. He offered Marisol a private settlement if she withdrew complaints. He promised her money if she signed a new release. Marisol told him no. He retaliated by sending her a letter suggesting she might have tax exposure and liability. She called me sobbing. Alex, he's saying I'll be audited. I said he's lying. I know, she whispered. But he sounds so sure. That's how villains like Grant win sometimes. Not by being right, but by being relentless. Then came the hearing notice. The bar scheduled a preliminary complaint hearing. Not a full trial, but a formal step. Testimony, evidence, credibility. My career, my reputation, hung in the balance. The night before, I sat at my kitchen table with Dana, going through every piece of evidence. Dana said, We have the bank trace. We have the IP logs. We have the metadata. We have Elise willing to testify. We have Marisol willing to testify. Grant is going to try to paint you as a rogue employee. I swallowed. Will they believe him? Dana looked me dead in the eye. Alex, truth wins when you can prove it. I nodded slowly. Dana tapped the table. And we can prove it. The hearing room wasn't a courtroom, but it felt like one. It was sterile and quiet and full of people who looked like they'd never had their lives threatened by a PDF. Grant arrived in a tailored suit, smiling like he was attending a fundraiser. He saw me and spread his hands like, Look at this tragedy. Dana leaned toward me. Don't look at him. Look at the panel. When testimony began, Grant spoke first. He delivered a performance. He said he'd trusted me, that he'd mentored me, that he'd been shocked to learn I'd abused that trust. He painted himself as heartbroken. Then he said, We're all devastated for Ms. Vega. Devastated, like the money had simply drifted away on the wind. When it was our turn, Dana stood, calm as stone. She didn't argue emotion. She argued facts. She submitted the bank trace, showing the funds went to an LLC not owned by Marisol, then to Rush Strategic Consulting. Grant's face tightened for the first time. Dana submitted the account's signatory records. Grant shifted in his seat. Dana submitted the bank portal IP log, wire initiated from Grant's office terminal. Grant's jaw clenched. Dana submitted the PDF metadata, created on Grant's machine. Grant's smile finally cracked. Then Elise testified. Her voice shook at first, but then she steadied, like a woman stepping into daylight. Elise said, Alex refused to sign. He asked for procedure. Mr. Rusk insisted on speed. The authorization packet appeared with Alex's forged signature. The wire went out. When Alex called me, he told me immediately it was forged. Grant's counsel tried to shake her. Counsel, isn't it true you processed the wire? Elise, yes, based on forged documentation and partner pressure. Counsel, so you failed. Elise, I was deceived. Counsel, or you're lying to save yourself. Elise looked straight at the panel. If I was saving myself, I'd blame Alex like you want. But I'm telling the truth. Then Marisol testified. She rolled in with her chair, head high, eyes tired. Grant didn't look at her. Marisol said, I never authorized an LLC. I never told Alex to send money anywhere except where we discussed. Mr. Rusk threatened me. He told me I could lose everything if I didn't cooperate. He told me Alex was unstable. Grant's counsel tried to paint her as confused. Counsel, Ms. Vega, isn't it possible you misunderstood? Marisol's voice sharpened. No, counsel, you've been under stress. Marisol, don't. Counsel, memory can be. Marisol, I remember the moment my spine broke. I remember the moment my husband left. I remember the moment you people told me my pain was exaggerated. And I remember Mr. Rusk trying to scare me into silence. The room went quiet. Then it was my turn. I testified simply. I said, I followed procedure. I refused to sign. I preserved evidence. I hired counsel. I requested forensic review. I did not destroy anything. I did not retaliate. I did not lie. Grant's eyes bored into me like nails. Dana asked, why didn't you just walk away? I swallowed. Because Marisol deserved her money. And because letting him frame me would mean he could do it again. Then Dana did something I didn't expect. She asked me one question that shifted the air. Alex, she said, did Grant ever tell you you're not the client? I blinked. I remember the voicemail. I said, yes. Dana asked, what did you respond? I swallowed hard. I said, and my voice tightened. I said, I'm paying my lawyer out of my own pocket, Grant, so stop trying to steer this. There was a ripple in the room. Grant's eyes narrowed. Dana held up a hand. Let's clarify. Alex, who is paying my retainer right now. I hesitated because this was the part one didn't want to reveal yet. Not because it was shameful, but because it changes how people see you. But Dana's strategy was precise. I said quietly, I am. Dana asked, with what funds? And there it was. The reveal I hadn't wanted to make because I knew what people would assume. I took a breath. I have personal assets. Grant's counsel pounced. Personal assets? A paralegal? Dana cut in calm. Answer the question. I looked at the panel. My father founded a small logistics company. He sold it before he died. I inherited a trust. I don't live extravagantly. I work because I believe in it. But I have resources. Grant's face tightened into something ugly. Dana continued. And Alex, did Grant know you had those resources? I swallowed. Not at first. Dana asked, when did he find out? I remember the day in the break room months earlier, when Todd had been bragging about a firm party, and I'd offhandedly mentioned I didn't like talking about family money. Grant had been behind me, silent. I said quietly, sometime last year. Dana nodded. Then she asked the question that made the room tilt. And after he found out, did his behavior toward you change? I stared at Grant. I said, yes. Dana turned to the panel. And what did he say to you, Alex, in his voicemail? I repeated it. The intimidation. The threat. The line about Marisol breaking. Grant's counsel objected. Dana played the voicemail anyway. Grant's voice filled the room, smooth and chilling. Marisol is fragile. People like her, they break. When the recording ended, the silence was heavy. Grant looked like a man who'd been exposed to bright light after years underground. His counsel whispered to him urgently. Grant stood suddenly. He said, this is a misunderstanding. Dana didn't blink. Grant's voice rose. This is a vendetta. Alex he's embarrassed. He's trying to ruin me because I disciplined him. Dana said, then explain the bank trace. Grant's face twisted. Those accounts. Dana, explain the IP log. Grant, IT can be. Dana, explain the PDF metadata created on your machine. Grant snapped. Anyone could. Dana stepped closer. Explain the notary journal. Grant froze. Because the notary journal had arrived that morning. And it showed someone had appeared with the client authorization page. Not Marisol. A man. Signed in with the name G. Rusk. The notary's notes. Partner. Verified ID. Grant's shoulders stiffened. Dana held up the journal copy and said, "Grant Rusk. That's you." The panel chair, an older attorney with tired eyes, looked at Grant and said, "Mr. Rusk, do you understand the severity of what is being alleged here?" Grant opened his mouth, then closed it, and for the first time, he looked scared, not remorseful, not sorry, scared of consequences. The panel recessed. I sat there, hands clasped, try to breathe. Marisol reached over and squeezed my hand. She whispered, "You didn't leave." I whispered back, "Neither did you." When the panel returned, they didn't rule on everything right away, but they did enough. They referred Grant's conduct for formal disciplinary proceedings. They acknowledged evidence of fabrication. They requested law enforcement review, and they issued a temporary finding that I was not responsible for misappropriation pending full investigation. I wasn't cleared completely yet, but the narrative had cracked. Outside, reporters weren't there. This wasn't that kind of public. But the firm's internal world, that moved fast. Because once powerful people smell a power shift, loyalty becomes flexible. Caldwell called Dana the next day. He sounded exhausted. He said, "We want to settle." Dana said, "You want to make Marisol whole?" Caldwell hesitated. "Yes." Dana said, "And you want Alex's record cleared?" Caldwell's voice cracked slightly. "Yes." Dana said, "Then cooperate. Full access. Full logs. Full transparency." Caldwell agreed. Grant didn't. Grant vanished. Not in a dramatic movie way. In a coward's way. His office was cleared out overnight. His firm email went inactive. His phone disconnected. He left behind a resignation letter claiming health reasons and unfortunate misunderstandings. He tried to fix his errors at the end in the way villains do, a last-minute attempt to rewrite reality. He sent Marisol a cashier's check from a third-party account. Not the full amount, just enough to look like good faith. Attached was a letter requesting she sign a release. Marisol handed it to Dana without touching it. Grant tried to file a withdrawal of the bar complaint against me, like he'd been doing me a favor. The bar didn't care. Grant tried to blame a rogue IT contractor. IT produced logs showing no such contractor existed. Grant tried to imply Elise fabricated records. Elise produced timestamps, emails, and her own documented notes. Grant tried to disappear into the legal fog. But this time, the fog didn't cover him. The formal disciplinary proceeding took months. During those months, I live in a weird limbo. Technically not guilty, but not fully cleared. Friends avoided me. Some family members told me to move on. Random messages still popped up from strangers who'd heard the first half of the story and didn't care about the ending. At my lowest point, when it looked like the slow machinery might still crush me, I sat alone in my apartment and considered quitting law forever. Dana called me that night. "Alex," she said, "do you know what people like Grant count on?" I swallowed. "Fear," Dana said, "and fatigue. They count on you getting tired. They count on you choosing peace over justice. They count on you saying, 'Let it go.'" My voice cracked. "I am tired." Dana's voice softened. "I know, but you're almost there." And then she said something that changed the way I saw myself. "You didn't become powerful in this story because you had resources," she said. "You became powerful because you refused to become dirty." That hit me like a punch, because that was the whole point. I wasn't special. I wasn't a superhero. I was just stubbornly honest. And honesty is inconvenient to liars. When the outcome came, it was brutal, exactly as it should be. Grant was disbarred. The bar's findings cited misappropriation, forgery, intimidation, and conduct involving dishonesty. Law enforcement pursued charges. Civil suits followed. His consulting company accounts were frozen. The money trail was undeniable. Marisol was made whole through a combination of recovered funds, firm insurance, and settlement agreements. It took time. It wasn't as instant as she deserved. But she got her money. Diego got his college fund back. Marisol bought an adapted townhouse with ramps that didn't look like afterthoughts. The day she got her keys, she called me and said, laughing through tears, "Alex, I can reach my own kitchen counter." I sat on my couch and cried like a kid. As for me, the firm tried to quietly restore me, like they could undo the damage with a handshake and a press release. Caldwell offered my job back. He said, "We value you." Dana asked, "Where was that value when you suspended him on forged papers?" Caldwell looked away, and that's where my own twist came, one I hadn't planned to reveal, but it mattered. Because while I kept my resources private, I hadn't been idle. My trust wasn't just money sitting in an account. It was invested. One of those investments, through layered entities and boring paperwork, was the building our firm rented. Not the entire building, but enough of it to matter. And another investment, through a holding structure managed by my father's old advisor, was a minority stake in the firm's real estate partnership. It wasn't I owned the firm. It wasn't a cartoon, but it was leverage. And Grant had been right about one thing. I wasn't the client. I was something else. I was the person who could force change. So when Caldwell offered me my job back, I didn't say yes. I said, "I'll come back under conditions." Caldwell blinked. "Conditions?" I said, "New trust account controls. Dual authorization that cannot be bypassed. Independent quarterly audits. Mandatory ethics training. A whistleblower policy with protection. Elise promoted. And Grant's name removed from everything. No quiet, health reasons narrative. The staff deserve the truth." Caldwell's face tightened. "That's a lot." I looked at him steadily. "So was what you let happen?" He tried to negotiate. I didn't budge. And when he asked why he should listen to a paralegal, I said the line that had started all of this, but with new meaning. "You're not the client," I told him. "I'm the one paying your retainer." He stared. Dana slid across the table a packet of documents. My holdings, the lease structure, the investment entities. Caldwell's shoulders slumped like a man realizing the floor has been moved. He said quietly, "You kept that hidden." I said, "I kept my life private." Grant used his power like a weapon. I'm using mine like a shield. Caldwell agreed. Not because he suddenly grew a conscience. Because consequences finally had teeth. Elise got promoted. She cried in my office when I told her, and I said, "You saved Marisol. You saved me. You deserve safety." We implemented controls that made it nearly impossible for one person to do what Grant did again. We changed how clients were treated. More transparency, more communication, more dignity. We created a policy that any client threats or intimidation would trigger an automatic external review. We started acting like the ethical firm we pretended to be. Grant, meanwhile, disappeared. Not dramatically, not nobly, not with redemption. He attempted to make amends through letters that sounded like public relations. He tried to paint himself as pressured, misunderstood, struggling. It didn't work. The people he hurt didn't know him comfort. And the world doesn't hand out clean slates to men who forge names and steal lifelines. The last thing I ever heard about him was from a rumor. He left the state, changed his number, and started consulting under a different name. Of course he did, because unredeemable people don't become good at the end. They just run when the spotlight hits. So, am I the asshole? Because here's what I did after I was fired and framed. I didn't quietly resign. I didn't take the fall. I didn't let the paper win. I documented everything. I hired counsel. I forced forensic review. I pushed for the bank trace. I pulled the notary records. I stood beside Marisol when she was terrified. I refused to destroy evidence, even when it would have made my life easier. And when it was over, I used my leverage to reform the system that almost swallowed us both. I've been told by a few people, mostly the ones who liked Grant, that I should have handled it internally, that I should have protected the firm's reputation, that I shouldn't have gone nuclear. But what is a reputation worth if it's built on stolen money and forged signatures? And what kind of man would I be if I let Marisol carry the cost of my silence? Edit 1. A lot of you are asking why I didn't leave the moment Grant got weird about the transfer. The honest answer is, I thought procedure would protect me. I thought my refusal to sign would be enough. I didn't understand how far someone like him would go to manufacture reality. Edit 2. People keep asking if Elise got in trouble. She was pressure hard at first, and yes, they tried to scapegoat her too. But she documented everything, and once the bank trace and logs came in, the firm had no choice but to back off. She's now in a role where she can't be isolated again. Edit 3. For those saying this feels unreal, I get it. I wish it was. But the reason it happens is because most people don't preserve evidence early. If you take one thing from this, save your records, don't retaliate, don't destroy anything, and get counsel before you try to explain it yourself. So no, it wasn't the end. I wish I could tell you that once Grant got exposed, everyone clapped, Marisol got her check, and the sun rose on a morally satisfying new day. What happened is something uglier and more realistic. The moment the fraud became undeniable, the people who couldn't pin it on me started asking one question. Who pays? And if you think the system's first instinct is make the victim whole, you're adorable. Dana, my attorney, got the preliminary letter confirming the panel was escalating Grant's case into formal discipline. I was not fully cleared yet, but the narrative had shifted from Alex stole it to Alex was framed. Marisol called me crying again, but this time it wasn't panic. It was relief. I can finally sleep, she said. I said, we're not done, but you're not alone. And the next shoe dropped. Caldwell and Rusk's malpractice insurance carrier. One of those corporate giants with a hotline voice that sounds like it's smiling sent a notice. They would cover certain losses only if the firm fully cooperated and only if there was no internal collusion. And then, the poison pill. They claimed Marisol's settlement funds were tainted by improper disbursement and therefore could be subject to reimbursement or delay while they investigated. Translation, we might pay, but we're going to make the disabled woman sweat first. Marisol got a letter that basically said, do not spend the funds until further notice. It was like watching someone slap her after she crawled to safety. She called me in the middle of the afternoon, voice shaking. Alex, they're saying it might not be mine. My stomach twisted. It's yours. They said if there was fraud, it can. I don't care what their letter implies. I said. I could hear my own anger sharpening. The settlement is yours. Grant stole it. They don't get to steal it again with nicer stationery. Dana warned me. Insurance carriers are sharks. They don't like paying claims. They'll try to create leverage. So we hit back with leverage of our own. Dana filed a motion to compel cooperation, requested a court order preserving Marisol's funds, and demanded the carrier put its concerns in writing under penalty. No vague threats. And then I did something I didn't plan to do. I opened my own wallet, not because I wanted to play savior, because I knew what time does to people like Marisol. Time is how the powerful win. I told Dana, if they delay, I want a bridge plan. Dana post. Alex, I'm not gifting her anything, I said. We structure it as an advance against recovered funds, documented, transparent. She gets stability now. Dana was quiet for a long moment, then said, you're sure? I remember Diego whispering, thank you. I said yes. Within 48 hours, Marisol had an emergency stipend for rent and medical copays while the carrier played games. The carrier didn't like that. It removed their leverage. Funny how quickly sharks calm down when the prey refuses to bleed. He tried to re-enter the story as the victim. Dana received a letter from Grant through counsel, claiming he was struggling, pressured, misunderstood, and that he never intended harm. It ended with a threat dressed as a compliment. Alex's unusual access to resources suggests motivations beyond professional duty. In other words, he's rich, so he must be doing something shady. The letter tried to plant a seed that my inheritance somehow made me suspicious. Dana's response was one sentence. Produce a single fact, or stop defaming my client. Grant didn't. Instead, he tried something else. He started tugging at the one thread that could still hurt me even if he went down. Kira. If you remember, Elise told me about Kira, the assistant from another case with a suspicious wire. HR said she left town. Elise found an NDA in her file. For weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Because if Grant did this once before, the pattern mattered. It wasn't just a one-time mistake. It was a system. Dana tracked down the NDA through discovery. It was brutal. A severance agreement with confidentiality clauses so aggressive, it basically read like a gag order. There's also a weird addendum about non-disparagement and liquidated damages that would financially ruin her if she talked. Classic intimidation disguised as paperwork. Dana said, if Kira testifies, Grant is finished. But she might not feel safe. So I did the only thing I could. I tried to reach her carefully. No surprise visits. No dramatic calls. Just a letter through a neutral third-party address Dana found in the record. It read, you don't know me. I'm Alex. I think what happened to you is connected to what happened to our client Marisol. You are not in trouble. I only want the truth. If you want to talk, my attorney's number is below. No pressure. 2 weeks passed. Then, at 10:18 p.m. on a Tuesday, Dana texted me. She responded. She wants to meet. Tomorrow. Public place. My stomach flipped. We met at a coffee shop that stayed open late and had too bright lighting. Kira arrived in a hoodie, hair pulled back, no makeup. She looked like someone who had trained herself to disappear. She sat down and didn't order anything. Her eyes flicked to the windows, the door, the corner. Then she looked at me and said, he's doing it again. My throat tightened. Yes. Kira swallowed. I thought if I signed the NDA, he'd stop. I said, what'd he do to you? She laughed once, small, bitter. He didn't do it all at once. He did it like boiling water. Kira told us. Grant made her handle routine trust paperwork because she was efficient. Then he corrected her drafts, saying she didn't understand partner-level preferences. Then the money disappeared. Then suddenly, she was the point of failure. HR called her in, talked about criminal exposure, handed her the NDA, and offered severance if she left quietly. She said, they made me feel like I could either sign or go to jail. Dana asked, did Grant threaten you directly? Kira looked down, not in writing. Then she pulled out her phone and played a voicemail she'd saved for over a year. Grant's voice filled the air, calm, intimate, cruel. Kira, you're a bright girl. Don't turn a mistake into a felony. Take the exit I'm giving you. Kira's hands trembled as she put the phone away. She whispered, I left town the next day. I thought it was over. Then I saw your name online, and I realized it's never over with him. He just picked someone new. Then Kira said something that made my skin go cold. He had a list. I blinked. What? Kira nodded, eyes glossy. A list of staff. People who were useful. People who were easy to manage. People with debt. People with family stuff. People with immigration worries. People who feared losing jobs. Dana's face went hard. He was profiling employees. Kira whispered yes. That was the moment it stopped being a bad partner and became something worse. A predator who treated human fear like a resource. Kira slid a small cardboard box across the table. Inside were printed emails, screenshots, and, most importantly, an old trust ledger reconciliation she'd copied before she left. On it, one line was circled in red ink. Rusk Strategic Consulting, consulting fee, trust account outbound. Same destination account. Same method. Different victim. Dana's eyes met mine. She didn't smile, but there was a fierce satisfaction in her expression. This, she said quietly, is pattern evidence. Kira leaned forward and said, he'll say I'm lying. Dana said, he can try. Kira whispered, he has people. Dana's voice was calm. So do we. While Grant was spiraling, Caldwell and Rusk went into survival mode. They started talking like they were the victims of Grant, too. We're devastated. We had no idea. We're committed to transparency. Sure. But then Elise, bless her, found something. The new trust controls, Caldwell agreed, were being rewritten in internal drafts to include an exception clause. In urgent circumstances, a senior partner may authorize immediate disbursement with subsequent documentation. Subsequent documentation. You know what that means? It means, do the wire now, forge the paper later. Elise showed me the draft and said, Alex, I think they're trying to keep the same door unlocked. I felt my blood heat up, because at that point, it wasn't just Grant. It was a culture that wanted a shortcut, a culture that saw safeguards as inconveniences. And I realized something I didn't want to realize. If I walked away, they'd quietly revert. If I stayed, I could force change permanently. So I made my move. Not a dramatic speech, not a public tantrum, a quiet meeting with Caldwell, Dana, and the firm's outside counsel. I slid the draft across the table and said, remove the exception clause. Caldwell frowned. Alex, we need flexibility. No, I said. You need accountability. Caldwell sighed. You're overcorrecting. I stared at him. A disabled woman almost lost her future. I almost lost my career. Elise almost got scapegoated. Kira had to flee her life. And you're calling safeguards overcorrecting? Outside counsel cleared his throat. Caldwell's jaw tightened. Alex, you're not the client. I held his gaze and said the line again, but this time I didn't say it to win. I said it because it was true. I'm the one paying your retainer. The room went very quiet. Dana placed the ownership and lease documents on the table, just enough to remind Caldwell that the paralegal he tried to sideline wasn't powerless. Caldwell stared at the paperwork like it was a loaded weapon. Then he said slowly, "What do you want?" And I said, "Independent trust audits quarterly, done by a third party with no partner override. Dual authorization hard-coded into the banking portal, no urgent exceptions. Any client authorization for alternative payees requires a recorded confirmation call logged and archived. Whistleblower protections in writing with an external hotline. Elise promoted and insulated from partner retaliation. A written statement to staff acknowledging wrongdoing and outlining reforms." Caldwell looked like he wanted to argue. Then he looked like he wanted to survive. He agreed. Grant's disbarment wasn't quiet. Once pattern evidence and intimidation were on record, there was no health issues narrative that could save him. Then the criminal investigators got the bank trace. Not just for Marisol. For the earlier case, Kira flagged. Then, suddenly, there were more. 3 additional suspicious disbursements across 5 years. Different staff. Same style. Same destination web of shell entities. Grant had been siphoning trust funds like it was an extra revenue stream. His defense tried to claim clerical errors. Then the notary journal showed his name. His clerical error had a driver's license. When he was finally charged, it felt less like triumph and more like gravity doing its job. Marisol got her full settlement secured and protected, with safeguards to prevent lien surprises and clawback nonsense. Diego got his college fund restored. The carrier paid because it had to. Elise stayed, promoted, and became the kind of gatekeeper Grant never wanted around. Kira's NDA was challenged. The intimidation clauses didn't survive scrutiny once criminal conduct was established. She's rebuilding her life. And for the first time, she told me she sleeps with her phone on silent. As for me, I stayed. Not because I love the firm, because I hate what it becomes when no one fights. We reformed it. We built controls that are annoying, slow, and airtight. And every time someone complains, I think of Marisol whispering, "I can breathe." That's why. So, AITA, some people at the firm think I went too far, that I humiliated the firm, that I should have protected the brand. But here's what I've learned. A brand that survives by burying truth deserves to be humiliated. And if standing between a predator and his next victim makes me the villain in someone's office gossip, I can live with that. Because Marisol can reach her kitchen counter now. If you've ever seen injustice in your workplace, someone powerful hurting people who can't fight back, remember this story when you're tempted to believe the first version you hear. And if you want more calm, story-driven, jaw-dropping threads like this, no yelling, no chaos, just the tea served steady. Like and subscribe to my YouTube channel at Bedtime Threads AI and check out the playlist Reddit AITA and Relationship Drama. Because if you've ever watched someone try to bury the truth at work, you already know the best revenge isn't screaming, it's receipts.